You're watching Roll Tide Daily, the new daily program for Crimson Tide fans, presented by SEC Country. Now, here's your host, former Alabama All-American, Mike Johnson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the debut episode of Roll Tide Daily. My name is Mike Johnson, and I could not be happier to be sitting in this chair right now. As a lot of you guys know, I am a former Crimson Tide football player, played under Nick Saban, and I'm about to bring you the best of the best when it comes to Alabama sports, particularly football. And I think what's fun about this show is I get to talk to you guys, you get to talk right back to me. We're going to have a ton of fun over the next 30 minutes. I've got a lot of stuff on deck. You guys know that we're going to talk about the Tua transfer speech. We're going to get Chris Lowe from ESPN.com to come on and talk to us a little bit about Nick Saban and his article written a couple of months ago about Nick Saban's tenure at Alabama. First, we're going to go into a little bit of the comment section as well, because I want you guys to make sure you interact with me on deck. That's the biggest part of the show, making sure I get to talk to you. You get to talk right back to me. We're going to use each other for a little bit of a sounding board. I'm going to bounce some stuff off you. You bounce some stuff off me. And that's how this show's going to go. So like I said, my name is Mike Johnson. This is the very first episode of Roll Tide Daily, and us here at SEC Country are so excited to bring you this show. This has been in the works for some time now, and we are going to get rolling here right off the top with topic number one, and that is this absolutely ridiculous. I got a bone to pick. The absolutely ridiculousness that is surrounding the Tua Tagovailoa transfer speech. The speech about perseverance that this guy goes to Hawaii and gives on Tua Tagovailoa Day in Hawaii to a bunch of elementary school kids. Now, I think that a lot of people have seen it. You've seen it on ESPN.com. You've seen it on Sports Illustrated. You've seen it all over Twitter. Tua goes and speaks to a bunch of elementary school kids, and he's just trying to give a speech about perseverance. He's trying to talk about overcoming the odds and the obstacles. He's trying to make sure that these elementary school kids know not to quit. You know, make sure you hang in there. Here's Tua right now talking to a little bit of these elementary school kids.
I told my dad if my offer to the University of Southern California was still available, I wanted to leave. It was so hard, I wanted to leave. So I told myself if I didn't play in the last game, which was the national championship game, I would have transferred out.
I know what he says. I know what he says. And I know what the detractors are going to say. Because that's Tua saying, listen, I talked about USC. I talked about leaving Alabama. I talked about the national title game. I talked about wanting to transfer. I got news for you. Tua's not going anywhere. Tua's not going anywhere. I know what they want from ESPN.com. They want the drama. From SportsIllustrated.com, they want the drama. They want to talk about Jalen's dad. They want to talk about Tua. They want to talk about how Nick Saban was under the gun for the national championship game. Luckily, CBS 42 over in Birmingham had Simone Eli on the scene, and she got a chance to catch up with Tua after the speech. This is what he had to say.
I think the more you kind of put your head in the ground, in the dirt, you know, and you keep working and pushing, trying to push through it, I think that's when you start to see the better of the end result, you know. And I kind of got the wrong end when I seen it on ESPN. You know, I think they most definitely took it out of context, saying if I didn't play, you know, I would have left and whatnot.
You hear what that is? That's a 19-year-old kid that just got done talking to elementary school kids and has to explain himself because on the bottom line of the ESPN ticker, he was going to transfer because of Jalen Hurts. Tua Tagovailoa was headed out of Alabama. He had Nick Saban against the wall. He had Nick Saban held to the fire. Tua was never going anywhere, man, and I'm so sick of this big-time media selling this story, right? It's the middle of May, right? Oh, but boy, Tua, he was going to go somewhere. It's backed by the Lane Kiffin article from a few months ago. Tua was headed out. Nick Saban had to make sure he did something. I just can't get over it. And it drives me absolutely crazy that we have to deal with this, because you know what's going to happen after that? ESPN.com is going to write an article. Boy, there's been too much drama in Tuscaloosa this offseason. There's too much going on around the program. Nick Saban doesn't have the pulse of it anymore. When's Nick Saban going to retire? He can't get these kids on campus and keep them. Every quarterback that ever goes there wants to transfer. Here's the fact of this matter. That's all fiction. Here's the fact of this matter. Tua wasn't going anywhere. Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach of all time. And I'm sitting here in SEC Country Studios saying that with pride because everybody behind me over here writing at their desk right now knows that that's the truth. Nick Saban's the greatest recruiter of all time. Nick Saban wasn't letting his best quarterback recruit he's had in his time at Alabama leave at any point in his tenure. Tua was never going anywhere. Talia Tagovailoa is now committed to Alabama. Their whole family moved to Birmingham, right? But yet, this guy in Tua, who's speaking to elementary school kids, has to go on and defend himself. Now, this is Tua, who hasn't spoken to the media a ton. Remember, this is 19-year-old Tua, right? 18, 19-year-old Tua, whatever, however old he is, he's a freshman. He's ending his freshman year. And this is a guy who hasn't even really talked to the media. This is a guy who's not even used to being the hero. He's not even used to speaking to kids. You don't learn to do that. I've been asked to do this in my hometown in Pensacola a few times. I'm still not good at it, man. I'm 31 years old. So he had to find something, right? He finds the perseverance. He talks about make sure you gut it out. Make sure you're doing everything necessary. Make sure you're scratching and clawing. Make sure you take every rep seriously because, I wanted to transfer. He talks about it right there. He talks about it in the interview with Simone Eli. Boy, during that fourth quarter, that was tough. I almost left. I almost wanted to get out of here. It just drives me crazy. And I think a lot of Bama fans feel the same way. Wayne Stratton, ESPN, when it comes to college football, disgusts me. David Hardy, love this show, Mike. You are the man. Hey, buddy, I'm excited to be here with you guys on Roll Tide Daily. As you can tell, I am fired up to get this thing going. I am about to take aim at so many Bama haters, so many Bama detractors, so many people online that want to talk about the dynasty coming to an end. Everybody that wants to recruit against Bama and say Nick Saban's leaving. Everybody that wants to question what the Tide is up to. Boy, there's too many distractions over there in Tuscaloosa. Tua was talking about transfer, and so was Jalen's dad. Can't you just let it be? Can't we just witness greatness and be excited about having two great quarterbacks on campus that are about to fight it out? That's what college football is all about, the competition, right? Talk about competition. Every college football coach comes on and talks about competition. Well, we got to breed competition. And for some reason, the fringe college football fans or the guys that aren't Alabama fans, they want to get on here and take away from that. Boy, it's not going to be good for that program. It's really going to divide the locker room. No, it's not. No, it's not. At Bama, it's all about winning, and that's all that matters. And getting the best quarterback in there is all that's going to matter this fall. So I'm going to kick over to the comment section a little bit. Hannah Chalker asked, Mike, thoughts on the locker room divide? Any truth to that? I don't see it. I really don't. I know that a lot of people like to talk about that. Will there be a locker room divide? Who's backing Jalen? Who's backing Tua? Guess what? You just saw Tua talk. You've listened to Jalen talk. The only thing that's really come out negative is Jalen's dad, and I didn't even really have a problem with that. He said how much he respected the program and respected Nick Saban. I think the locker room divide talk, in my opinion, is just it's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know. I think everybody in the Bama locker room, and I've sat in these locker rooms before during quarterback competitions, everybody knows that winning is the main goal. That winning in the end is what's going to cure all, especially at a place like Alabama. So you guys keep the comments coming in. We're talking a little bit about everything that's going on within the dynasty. Brett Tears Jr. says the dynasty is dead when we say so. Boy, I agree. When Nick Saban says so, that's when the dynasty is dead. We're living through the greatest 10 years in the history of college football when it comes to one specific team, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide. So we're gonna pivot over now to topic number 2. Moving along very quickly. Now, I wanted to bring this up because I think this is a big deal moving forward. This to me points at Nick Saban evolving within his job. I'm going to talk about this a ton on this show coming up. Nick Saban's ability to evolve around college football. College football is having to establish rules all the time, right? For Nick Saban, you got to come up with only this many people on your staff. Yet just yesterday or today, they passed a rule prohibiting over 20 headsets on the sideline. But I think this right here is evidence that Nick Saban is evolving in what he's trying to do at Alabama, and that's this Texas series that Nick Saban and the administration at Alabama have just gotten put together. Here you see it right here. Here's the tweet out of Alabama football last week. Alabama, Texas, Tuscaloosa, Austin, coming up in 2022 and 2023, and boy, I've got to tell you guys, I was on the field last time Alabama took the field and played the Texas Longhorns, and I got to tell you, there might not be two more passionate fan bases that have ever lived, and I am excited to get on the ground for this one. I'm going to make the trip to Austin. I've already started stockpiling the money away for that one. I know that a lot of those Texas fans are going to be willing to make the trip to Tuscaloosa. This is a great thing, and anybody who is detracting from this, boy, this is Nick Saban reacting and making sure his schedule's strong enough. No, it's not. This is Nick Saban understanding that there's more ground to pick from here. You can go after and schedule these games. He's been doing it for 10 years. This is Nick Saban going to Orlando. This is Nick Saban going to Alabama. But I'm going to tell you what this is that Nick Saban's doing with this game right here. This is Nick Saban going into the state of Texas and saying, you know what? I don't care who your coach is. I don't care who your quarterback is. You're not going to be able to beat us in 2022 and 2023. I'm still going to be here. That's what I hear out of Tuscaloosa right now. Nick Saban will still be the head coach in 2023 when that game heads to Bryant-Denny Stadium. And he wants to make sure that he is telling everybody that he is ready for that matchup, that he's ready for everything that's going to be put in front of him, that he's going to make sure he gets a lot of these Texas recruits in Tuscaloosa, in Austin for this game, and he's going to make sure everybody understands that Alabama is the greatest team in the country no matter who they're playing. It's going to be the same for Notre Dame. Now, I'm not ready to step out on the ledge and say Nick Saban's still showing up for the Notre Dame game, which is what, 2026, 2027, something along those lines. But this Austin game, to me, is Nick Saban evolving. He's saying, you know what, we don't have to go to Atlanta right now. We don't have to go down to Orlando. We don't have to go to Dallas as much right now. We can go into these opposing stadiums. We can make sure College Game Day shows up. We can make sure all these college football fans and College Game Day and everybody from ESPN, all eyes will be on Bama. All eyes will be on the Tide facing off against Texas, and the Longhorns coming up in a few years. Could not be more excited about that matchup. So I'm going to take a little bit of time out right here now, guys, and I want to welcome in our first ever guest for the debut edition of Roll Tide Daily. Again, my name is Mike Johnson. This is day number 1. We're going to have a ton of good topics. But for our first special guest, I wanted to bring in a guy from ESPN.com, and that's Chris Lowe. Chris was on Jocks last week, and he was talking about Nick Saban's tenure at Alabama. And he opened up a lot of eyes. It comes from an article he wrote a couple of months ago. Opened up a lot of people's eyes. And Chris, I hope you'll kind of dive into it with us when we talk about Nick Saban's tenure, what this Texas home and home series means. But Chris was able to say last week on Jocks that, you know what, it's going to be at least another 5 years before Nick Saban even thinks about leaving Tuscaloosa. Chris, how are you doing? And what can you add as far as that conversation goes to what you said last week on Jocks? I thought those were great words, and I think the heavens opened, the clouds opened, and I think Bama fans were rejoicing when you went off on that tangent.
Hey, Mike, it's good to be with you. It's great to be on your show. I had a chance to get to know Nick pretty well over the years, and he's always gracious enough to, usually in the spring and sometimes in the preseason, to let me come in and we sit and talk about a lot of different things. And he's been pretty consistent when that subject has come up, and it's been sort of a hot topic lately. People had talked about, whether he was going to, how much longer he's going to coach, and if he did step away, was Dabo Swinney the replacement? My conversations with Nick this time in recent, he just, it's not even on his mind, Mike, is not coaching football. I mean, I don't think he told me, he said, I can't imagine my life without coaching football. And why would he step away? He's in great health. His program's in even better health. I mean, they're recruiting like gangbusters. They're winning. This is what he loves to do. He's done it since he was a kid. He's been around some football team in some form or fashion since he was a pup, and his dad was driving that bus around in West Virginia and picking up kids for Pop Warner football. It's who Nick is. And, yeah, he's 66. I know people get caught up in age when it comes to coaches. But if you've ever been to practice, and I know you have, I mean, he's anything but a CEO, man. He's in the middle of everything. He's working the drills with the DBs. He's all over the place. He just is not a guy that can sit still, or as he's told me many times, I'm not a sit-around kind of guy. I mean, he's not going to go to the beach. I mean, he's got a great place in Boca Grande, Florida. He's got a great place at Lake Burton. He likes to go there for about a week, and he's ready to go be a ball coach again. And I just don't see that changing anytime in the next 4 or 5 years. I really don't.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And listen, I think one of the angles that a lot of people aren't talking about this is about recruiting. But obviously us here at SEC Country have a ton of other writers from a bunch of other schools. And there's been chatter around the building that, hey, this is Nick Saban going through the media to deliver message to recruits. When really, I think he's telling the absolute honest truth. And I think that Georgia fans have a problem with it because I think that everybody understands that Nick Saban's extremely calculated. That he understands that people are hearing this. And you can't have, say, Kirby or Jimbo or Jeremy Pruitt saying, boy, you know what, he's on his way out the door. Do you have a message for detractors like that? Because obviously you've seen this firsthand.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, let's look at a couple ways. First of all, if Nick was thinking about, maybe he's going to retire in the next 1 or 2 years, why would he or any coach come out and say that? It'd be stupid. Okay, and the last thing Nick Saban is stupid. So no coach is going to come out and say, yeah, I mean, Spurrier did it a few years ago. Yeah, I got a couple of years left in me, and it killed him on the recruiting trail. So all coaches are like that. But in Nick's case, again, I haven't just talked to him, I've talked to people close to him and known him a lot longer than I have. And I say Steve Spurrier probably said it best, when he talked to Nick. He says, if you're thinking about retiring in this business, you're probably already retired. He says, that was my problem. I should have gotten out the year before. He said, Nick ain't thinking about retiring. He says, not even anywhere on his radar. And I mean, that's the difference with Saban. He's thinking about the next recruiting trip he's going to make, the next practice, the next drill. And I think he's got, I said he's 66, and I think that he will go into his 70s. I'd be very, very surprised, Mike. Hey, we don't have a crystal ball. You don't. If God forbid there was some type of health issue with him or his family, if there was some type of administrative upheaval at the university that negatively impacted him and the way he wants to do his job, then maybe all bets are off at that point. But if none of those things happen, I think we'll still see Nick Saban coaching at 70 and 71.
Yeah, for all the good things, though, I think in that interview last week with Jocks over there in Birmingham, I think the one thing that Bama fans really wanted to hear is one thing you probably weren't ready to say, and that's the topic of Dabo Swinney heading over to Tuscaloosa. You didn't sound very high on the idea of Dabo Swinney heading to Tuscaloosa after Nick Saban left. Take us inside that a little bit. I mean, if Nick Saban were to take, say, an administrative job, does that increase the chances of Dabo Swinney coming to Tuscaloosa, say, in 5 or 6 years? I mean, take us inside the thought process that would be Dabo Swinney in a few years heading to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I think timing is important there, Mike. When is it? Does Nick step away in 2 years? Or is it 5, 6, or 7 years? Where is Dabo at that point? What's going on at Clemson? I can tell you this about Dabo and Clemson. He loves it there. He loves the administration. He loves that community. He fits perfectly. I don't know if there's a better fit in all of college football, head coach to school and community, than Dabo Swinney at Clemson. And he's built that program very much in the image of the Alabama program, the way they recruit. He surrounded himself with good people. He connects with people as well as any head coach in college football. And look at their results. Look at their success. I mean, their facilities are – I've never seen a football facility anywhere, and I'm talking about professional anywhere, that tops what they have at Clemson. He's got it all right there, to win another championship or two. So that said, even though Bama is his alma mater, as we all know, 50, 60 years ago when Mama called Bear Bryant, he couldn't say no. So you never say never, and Dabo's never going to say never. But right now, I don't think it's going to happen. And Woody McCorvey, who is probably – there's no probably to it. He's Dabo's closest confidant. Coached Dabo at Alabama when he played there. He doesn't see it happening. He said, I just think that this is such a good fit for Dabo. His family loves it here. This is all they know. And you know what? Dabo, he didn't really tell me this. We sort of joked about it when I was with him. But, Mike, I say this with all due respect, and it's a compliment to Nick. But who in the hell will want to go in behind Nick Saban with what he's done? Seriously.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one, and I think that's definitely – it's the hope for Alabama fans, I think, just because Dabo's proven the ability to get back to that point. But I'm with you. It's just so hard. I mean, I can't even remember – was it Ray Goff that followed Bear Bryant at Alabama? I can't even remember who the name was, and I think that's what makes it so tough for the coach to do.
But for me, it's even different with Dabo because he's got such a juggernaut going where he is now. It's not like he's, at a place where – they got most of the resources that Bama does, or they're recruiting almost as well, or they're trying to get to that national championship plateau. He's got all those things at Clemson.
Yeah.
Obviously, the difference is that Bama's his alma mater, and there's a draw sometimes there for people, that you just have a hard time saying no, and I get that. But again, with everything that Nick's done there and the unbelievable expectations, the one thing Dabo did tell me, Mike, was he says, and Nick will acknowledge this. It is national championship or bust now in Alabama. That's the way it is. You hear that all the time. Fans, Dabo says, I've fought that here in our building in Clemson. He said, I think our fans are getting to that level. He said, it's always going to be that way at Alabama. He said, I spent 13 years there. I get it, whether you're going behind Nick or not. So I don't know if that's something that he's really to dive right into right now. I think right now, Dabo, though, is so focused on Clemson and what they can accomplish there. I don't think it's really on his radar. And again, I'd be surprised if he goes. but you never say never.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that one, and we've got kind of splitting in the comment section right now. Some people saying that's definitely going to be a tough act to follow. Other people saying Alabama is going to be home to Dabo. Chris, before I let you go, I got to get you to weigh in on the Tua transfer speech, right? The perseverance speech that he gave over the weekend back in his home in Hawaii to some elementary school kids. Is this being blown out of proportion? I think it's being blown out of proportion. I think this is a mid-May topic. I think this is Tua kind of settling in and trying to tell these kids not to leave. He says it was kind of taken out of context, although I understand why people ran with the story. What'd you make of that speech out of Tua Tagovailoa?
Yeah, and that's a good question because a couple things come to mind, Mike. I mean, first of all, I think Tua's probably getting a pretty good education in what it means and what it is and the ramifications of being the Alabama quarterback. Everything you do, everything you say is going to be reported, distorted. It's going to be hashed and rehashed, misconstrued, all those things, accurately, 50% accurate. And I'd say going forward, whether he's out in Hawaii or they're speaking to the media there locally, he's going to understand that he's the Alabama quarterback, and whatever he says is news. And I think that's the first thing. The second thing, and I sort of agree, I think he'd probably look at it like I'm speaking to some kids here, from where I'm from, trying to sort of impress upon them, hang in there. Look at me. I was about ready to transfer. I was thinking about leaving, but I didn't. And look at the way it worked out. I hung in there. I got my shot, and I cashed in on my shot. I think that was probably his message, but still there is a news element in there that he was probably going to transfer thinking about. But you know what? I don't think that's really a revelation. I think had he not played in that game, he probably would have fought long and hard. Had Alabama gone on to win and Hurts stayed in and still won the national championship, I think he probably would have thought long and hard about leaving, but most people would. Because you know what, Mike, as we see all the transfers over the last 3 years, guys who are ranked number 1, number 2 at their position, quarterbacks aren't going to sit. If they go somewhere and they're not playing, they're going to go somewhere else where they can play.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And you talk about thinking long and hard. I have no issues with the statement that Tua would have thought long and hard. I just don't see it happening in the end. But, Chris, thanks for stopping by today on the debut edition of Roll Tide Daily here on SEC Country. Hope to have you on again soon,
hey, Mike,
brother.
Before I go, can I ask you a question right quick?
Have at it, man. Have at it.
All right, you asked me a lot of questions. I want to ask you a question. All right, and I want you to answer this truthfully. Who during their 2 outstanding careers at Alabama held more and got away with it more, you or William Vallejo?
We're going to have William Vallejos on the show later in the week, so I'm going to go with William Vallejos just so we can ask him that exact same topic, because I'm sure he will definitely enjoy that coming from you. But Big Bill Vallejos was a holder, man. His arms are only about 12 inches long, so he had to hold on. He had to hold on and go for the ride, man. But that's a great question.
But you know what?
Man.
It's not holding if you don't get caught.
That's
right?
hey, listen.
It's not holding.
That's my entire football career was based off that principle right there, Chris. So it's not holding unless you get caught, and it didn't happen to me that much.
You be sure you pass that question along to Notch when he's on. But you guys, you and William both, I tell you what, all the times I was in Alabama over the years covering, of course, they've been so good for the last 10 years. I know Interstate 59 like the back of my hand. But you guys are as good a guys to cover and talk to and get to know as anybody. And it's always a pleasure to be on your show, my friend.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate the kind words, and hopefully you'll join us again soon. And have a good day, buddy.
You too. See you, Mike.
That's Chris Lowe from ESPN.com, ESPN senior writer from ESPN.com, and that's a lot of good stuff right there about Dabo Swinney, about Nick Saban. Even brings up a little William Vallejos at the end of that. We're going to have William Vallejos on the show later this week on Thursday. He's a Buffalo Bills offensive analyst. He's got a little bit of A.J. McCarron insight, and also going to talk to him about Alabama's offensive line. Tomorrow on the show, the one and only John Parker Wilson. We're going to have him on here. We're going to talk about Jeremy Pruitt and Kirby Smart comments that he made a couple of weeks ago on Jocks. We're also going to talk to him about what he's doing now and what his career was like at Alabama. So now I want to pivot to what I think is going to be you guys' favorite segment. And I promise you this will probably be the last time we bring this guy's name up on the show, because I don't want to give him the credit that I know that he thinks he deserves. But I just, as an honorary part of this show, to kick off this segment, the first time we're ever going to do it, we're going to kick off a segment called You've Lost Your Mind. And this is coming straight from social media. And sometimes we'll sprinkle in some stuff from TV, but I want this to be user-driven, right? I want this to be people that are tagging this, hashtag YLYM, hashtag You've Lost Your Mind. finding stuff on Twitter, finding stuff on Facebook, because I hear it all the time, right? The dynasty's over. Nick Saban, boy, he doesn't have it anymore. You know, how many times have you heard that over the last 10 years? Boy, Nick Saban's not going to get there. This is a special edition because I think this guy really has lost his mind. I think this guy really has gone over the edge of what he can separate fact and fiction from what he actually tweets out anymore. And we're going to go down this a little bit, but I want to give some backstory because last week we had a lot of talk from Nick Saban about UCF, right? And Nick Saban gets on, I think, the radio over in Jocks, the Regions tournament over there in Birmingham, and he's asked about the UCF national title. And I think we have the quote right here to give you on the screen. I guess anybody has a prerogative to claim anything, but self-proclaimed is not the same as earning it. And there's probably a significant number of people who don't respect people who make self-proclaimed sort of accolades for themselves. That is about as Nick Saban, that's as most Nick Saban dig I can possibly think. Probably a significant number of people. Didn't say I feel that way. Didn't say Alabama fans feel that way. Just said there's probably a significant number of people who don't respect people who make self-proclaimed sort of accolades for themselves. I love that out of Nick Saban. Nick Saban usually doesn't say stuff like this, but in this one instance, he went out on a tangent and said, you know what? I'm tired of all this talk. Here's how I really feel about the issue, and I'm going to go on record and say this. And I don't think it was a huge dig, but I think that he kind of got it off his chest and said what was on his mind. That builds up to the next one because Scott Frost, last year's UCF head coach, had a rebuttal. He's on a radio show over in Nebraska where he's now the head coach. And he had already said, you know, listen, I think you have to earn it. But here's Scott Frost's rebuttal to KETV. I think I'm on the record enough with that kind of stuff. But Alabama's probably got one or two championships that they claim that weren't necessarily recognized by everybody. Boy, Scott Frost, boy, you're really taking digs at us, aren't you, buddy? That's new stuff, man. That's new stuff out of you. That's original. That's classic. I think it's so funny because when I was growing up, I remember being about 10 years old and Nebraska claimed a split national championship back in '97. But that's news for another day because we've got to name our guy who has lost his mind. Danny Kanell, come on down, brother. You knew it was going to be Danny Kanell as soon as I opened up this screen and put "You've Lost Your Mind" on the bottom. Danny Kanell just couldn't help himself, right? Anytime Bama's in the news or Nick Saban's in the news and it's not Florida State, not ACC, Danny Kanell's got to say something about it. Here's Danny Kanell's tweet from the middle of last week after all this goes down. Not sure how you can say you earned a national title when you didn't win your conference and were gifted an invitation to the College Football Invitational, but yes, congrats on being the best of those invited 4 teams. Danny Kanell, I have got news for you, buddy. You've lost your mind. I think that anytime you bring up earned, first of all, let me tell you exactly how they earned it. They went into the College Football Playoff. They beat number 1 Clemson down in the Sugar Bowl. And then they headed up to Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm sitting right now, and they beat Georgia in the national title game. That's how you earn a national title. I don't know what you want to talk about UCF. We're definitely not going to talk about his alma mater, Florida State. You earn a national title by beating the best teams in the country, which is exactly what Alabama did, and it's not what UCF did. It's not what Nebraska did. It's shamefully not what Georgia did. You earn the national title on the field. That's why the trophy's in Tuscaloosa. It just goes back to something I said we saw back in December. When all this was coming down about Alabama getting plugged in the College Football Playoff, and Kirk Herbstreit actually responded to it. I think we have that tweet as well. Kirk Herbstreit back in December, and I feel like this is exactly the way I feel. That's Danny Kanell tweet. We're going to go to Kirk Herbstreit right here. So here's what he says. This is after Danny Kanell tweets about the playoffs back in December. Dude, what has happened to you? Seriously, you're a good guy, and I get the whole anti-SEC guy you've created, but you think ESPN wouldn't love to have Ohio State in this? They're a ratings bonanza. Come on, dude. You're better than that. I couldn't agree more, buddy, and that's why Danny Kanell has lost his mind today, and that's going to be it for You've Lost Your Mind. I don't know how often we're going to do that segment. I really don't. I think that anytime something pops up, we're going to be able to deliver it to you. But if you do see something you want to tag, hashtag You've Lost Your Mind, hashtag YLYM, things like that. So that's going to be a topic that I think is going to be fun for a lot of Bama fans, especially this is a social media show. We're going to get to talk about social media and comments a lot coming forward. So here's our last segment today is going to be around the capstone. And I know a lot of people have been excited about softball. A lot of people have been excited about men's golf. We've got some score updates from the weekend, I believe, to give to you right here from the men's golf team, or the Alabama softball team, Alabama women's golf team. Put that graphic up for us right now. The women's golf team, listen, the women's golf team is doing absolutely work, okay? I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to this, but they're leading by like 8 strokes headed into the 4th round of this, and if they are within like the top 20, they're able to go on to match play. Softball, if anybody paid attention yesterday, after the rain delay, softball comes out and absolutely deals with this regional. And I think this is a big deal for me because Bama softball has won a regional for the last 14 years. Since they had regionals in softball, since they've had the super regional, Bama has won every single year and headed to the super regional for the last 4 years. They absolutely demolished, I think, Oregon State and Washington over the weekend. And so they're heading to the super regional next weekend. I can't remember who they're going to face, but that's going to be fun to watch along. I think it's Washington they're playing next weekend. So we're also going to talk about the men's golf team because they're dealing with the regional right now, and they absolutely clobbered some of the people. Finished fourth in that regional. They're going to advance to the NCAA championships as well, which is also in Stillwater, Oklahoma, where the women are right now. That's exciting to follow. Anybody who's been following Bama golf, they are playing extremely well lately. A couple of guys who are really, really leading that up. And, of course, you got baseball. Just a disappointing season for the baseball team. They end the season with a loss to Ole Miss. It's one of the more disappointing years that you can remember in Tide baseball for quite some time. When I was in school back from 05 to 09, we had a pretty good team. You know, we're in regionals, we're in super regionals. This is not the Bama baseball team of yesteryear. Definitely a little bit of a letdown. So that's going to wrap it up for today's edition of Roll Tide Daily. Appreciate everybody that was able to tune in. Remember, we are going to be on Monday through Thursday right here from 1 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Thursday, for the foreseeable future. And I can't wait to talk Alabama football, all Alabama sports. We're going to have so many good segments. Tomorrow, we're going to have John Parker Wilson. We're going to cover some recruiting, maybe a little bit of Joe Burrows down at LSU talk, cover a little bit of SEC. For anybody who knows me from SEC Country Live, I'll be back on SEC Country Live at 3 o'clock Eastern time, 2 Central here this afternoon. And if you can't catch that, then please come back and hang out with us tomorrow. Roll Tide, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us.
You've been watching Roll Tide Daily, the new daily program for Crimson Tide fans, presented by SEC Country.